Now, as you know, here on the Daily Politics, we like to think that we help you tell the signal from the noise. But with the government, think tanks and charities all claiming to have the definitive facts and figures on a particular issue, it can be difficult to know who to believe. Take the cost of a big infrastructure project. For example, on Tuesday's programme, the Conservative MP Antoinette Sandbach cited a figure on how much HS2, the new high-speed train link from London to the north of England, is expected to cost. But Labour peer, a man who's always been in favour of HS2, Andrew Adonis, took issue with the number and its source. Let's have a listen.
On the cost, it's not fair to say that the cost ballooned in this way. What's happened is big adjustments have been made for inflation.
So what is the cost now, do you think, running to?
Well, the Institute of Economic Affairs estimate it at over 100 billion. The Department of Transport themselves estimate it at 55 billion.
Okay, well,
the IEA is not an unbiased observer, I should say.
Are we saying 55 billion? Are we saying 55 billion is correct?
And we're joined now by Mark Littlewood, director of the very same Institute of Economic Affairs. It's a free market think tank. So I think we know it's not exactly unbiased. You do come at the world or economic
from a particular angle.
From a particular angle. So let's not spend too much time on that. Let me ask you, though, what is your estimate or the Institute's estimate of the cost of HS2?
She was actually wrong what she said on your programme. We haven't gone as high as 100 billion. Our best guess at the moment is around about 80 billion or slightly higher. It is a guesstimate, it's a forecast. It's based on the typical overrun of similar infrastructure projects in the past.
So that assumes an element of overrun?
Yeah, that's historically what's happened. Sure. And it's a prediction, it's a midpoint prediction.
Right. When we say HS2, does that 80 billion, it gets us to Birmingham? Mm-hmm. Does it also get us to Manchester and get us to Leeds?
Should do. The
80 billion.
So what we've seen is a whole range of additional things to get towns HS2 ready. Yeah. We think that there are a lot of off-balance sheet liabilities with HS2 that the government aren't attaching to the figures. Already, of course, the government's number has gone up to 55 billion. They've accepted the cost now is rather higher than initially. And this is about part and parcel for major government infrastructure projects. It's extremely rare to see one come in time and on budget.
Right. Now, HS2, I think, is almost entirely publicly funded project.
That's right.
That is a taxpayer funded project. Does that mean that, given that you come from a free market perspective, that you are almost automatically biased against such projects?
I wouldn't say biased against it, sceptical. I mean, the IEA has never argued that the state should spend no money, but we think that it is prima facie...
Not that that would be an extreme position at all.
We would say prima facie, right?
Evolution.
The starting point would be, if the private sector isn't willing to invest in HS2, that's got to raise some questions. We know the private sector is willing to invest in, say, airport expansion. Right. You can take all sorts of views about whether that's necessary, what the impact is on the environment is. We know the private money's there.
But there will still have to be state money for infrastructure in that as well.
In Heathrow there is indeed. In Heathrow there is. Okay. It's not fully private funded, but that would be, on indication, a good test of viability.
Is there anywhere where the private sector has built high-speed trains?
Not to my knowledge, actually, but I think there's a question of...
It wouldn't have happened.
Well, are high-speed trains a good thing? I mean, I think one of the criticisms of HS2 is actually, once it comes online, it might look like something from a science fiction movie now, but actually, once it comes online, it may be a little old-fashioned. We could well be travelling around in driverless cars. So I don't start from the presumption that high-speed rail is, of itself, a good thing.
But there is always a mixture in infrastructure spending. And in recent years, it's gone more your way. There's more private money has become involved in infrastructure spending. But even in the most purest of states that the IEA would approve of, like Singapore, there is big government infrastructure spending there.
Yeah, and I think...
Surely the job of government is to provide an infrastructure that allows the market to operate more efficiently.
Well, sure. I mean, I think one of the things you can look in there, if you have got, say, government investment in road schemes, even if it is taxpayers' money and state money being spent, to what extent can you marketise it with things like tolls? I mean, we've now got the London congestion charge, so the sort of idea even though it's public money, is that those who use it pay for it. It's not a pure free market system, but it begins to introduce the price mechanism into it. Okay. One of the dangers, I think, on HS2 and the other grand projects is that there's always a temptation for politicians to invest in one of these big legacy sort of schemes, these huge new realms. If you're going to spend money, probably spend it on 100 or 200 rather smaller schemes, which aren't going to be as headline grabbing, aren't going to last for generations, but actually probably will do more to actually ease up congestion and facilitate the economy.
He has a point there. Politicians love what the French call the grand projet.
They do, and I think that's right. And I think there is reason, there's been quite a bit of research done, not only by the IEA, but by others, that have suggested that smaller projects that might cut your commuting time between one town and another in the northeast or whatever might help the economy more. But on the broader argument about whether this should be public money, the reason it would need to be taxpayers' money if it's worthwhile doing is that the benefits of doing this might be felt much more broadly than you would get from
externalities.
Yeah, exactly. If it improves the economy of whether it's Manchester or Birmingham or whatever, that's much more broadly felt than it is by the people who travel on it or build it.
Rather than 80 billion on the high HS2, I would settle for just 8 million on better Wi-Fi on the existing trains, because that can be highly productive on that.
True,
What's your view?
What people have concentrated far too much on HS2 is speed and far too little on capacity. Actually, we're in desperate need of another train line or more capacity to take more people to more places.
Concentrated on speed because that was the original argument of the Department of Transport.
That was a mistake. They missold HS2 from the get-go, talking about speed.
I don't think they're going to change the name, are they? I mean, HS2, that would confuse everyone. Where would you spend public money?
I think there is a role for a welfare state. I think there is a role for a safety net. I don't want to live in a society where somebody, either through accident or even through their own poor decision, slips through the bottom. But you mentioned Singapore a bit earlier, Andrew, a different culture, a different country to ours, a different history to ours. But I think the state should probably account for about 20-25% of national income, not about 45% of national income, which is the rate at the moment. That would be a huge change.
Even America doesn't come close to that.
It doesn't. Singapore and Hong Kong would be my standout examples. I'm a patient man. I'm happy to wait a generation to get there. But you're right, it would be a huge change.
Well, you could wait on high speed too, actually, and go up and down the country.
That'd be about right.
Thank you very much.